Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. On behalf of Youth Health Community, welcome to everybody to what I know is going to be a passionate discussion about youth perspectives on a healthy community. My name is Sam Allen, and I'll be your host and moderator today. We have, and welcome to you all as you come into the room, we have over 100 participants from multiple countries and a variety of different backgrounds and businesses. Among you this afternoon are international organizations, networks, universities, government organizations, community-based programs, other public and of course private partners. Welcome to you all. Please, if you'd like to, do drop us a note in the chat to say hello and let us know which organizations and which countries you're joining us from. Now, coming up in the next hour, we are going to meet some incredible individuals from across Europe who are going to share their unique perspectives and activations for change to create sustainable, healthy communities. I'm excited to be meeting them. We, of course, if you were with us in November, you'll remember this, we invite you to participate in this conversation via the chat with your experiences or your contribution, and of course, in the Q&A with any questions for our speakers. Please make sure you get them in nice and early so I can ask as many as we can in the time we've got. Another bonus piece of content we're going to offer is after the session today, you have the opportunity to meet face-to-face with our speakers. We are going to pop a Zoom link into the chat later on, and I'll let you know, I'll remind you of this. But for half an hour after today's session, you will get the opportunity to go and meet our panelists in person and ask any questions you've got for them if we don't get to them all during the show. Now, before I welcome our first speaker, I would like to welcome His Royal Highness Prince Pieter Christian of Oranje-Nassau. I think he's joining me now. Wonderful to see you, sir. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, and thank you for organizing this webinar. It's very important.
Thank you very much for joining us. I can't believe it was, November when we were together at our first online event, and time has flown. And you kindly opened that too. Now, for our audience, as an ambassador of JOG, who've developed these events and Youth Health Community, why is this so important to participate in and to support?
Well, I think the topics will be discussed today by the very interesting speakers. They really touch on very relevant topics. I mean, we've seen during the pandemic how that has impacted our youth. And actually today, I came up with an article in the New York Times, which wrote about the impact of school closures on youth. And basically what these teachers said is that some schools even closed over 1 year, that the effect on the mental well-being, children miss social interaction, opportunity to meet and sport together, and that really it impacted the lifestyle of the kids more towards an unhealthy lifestyle. And some even got completely lost out of sight from school, so we don't even know what happened to them. And that taking into account that our society nowadays is almost everything is behind the computer, right? So we have a culture where we sit down indoors rather than to move. So therefore schools are so important that we go there and support and actually move. So and it definitely supports a healthy lifestyle. So I think we will hear much more from, as you said, very experienced people that will promote this, and I'm also very keen to learn more about them, what their views is on this, and how to get kids again motivated and into a healthy lifestyle after such a horrible year for them.
It has been a horrible year. Now, JOG have brought together these incredible individuals who've got great stories, and it's going to be a really good discussion. But this still seems to be a unique initiative, frustratingly for our speakers, that we're not hearing the voices of young people. What do you think the barriers are to engaging with young people and hearing their opinions and ideas? And why is this so important that we're doing this today?
Well, because it starts with us. We are the role model. We see these kids every day. As a parent, I see my kids every day. If I'm behind my laptop and my computer every day, I don't, if I didn't shout, well, don't shout at them, but of course, if I then criticize them being behind their laptops or mobile phones too long, and then saying that's unhealthy for you, or make comments about their screen time, I'm the bad role model, so to say. So what is my right of speak? So I think that's something we have to keep in mind as parents, as people who actually promote this, as jog, as ambassadors, that we are the role model, and keep in mind that, you know, everything we do reflects on these kids. And second of all, I do also feel that, you know, there are lots of challenges with online gaming. People love, we are so busy right now, we love to give them the digital nanny rather than to go outside with them, go for a walk or do sports. So it's important to also have strategies, not just for the kids, but also for ourselves, to motivate them and so they are enjoying it, because it's so important that we promote kids in something they enjoy and not something because we believe it's good for them, right? So we put them on the sports because we were used to play hockey or soccer. And again, I come back to the school, because at the school there is this healthy environment where we do have, I mean, this is where the kids spend a lot of their time during the day, and there they have the opportunity to sport and also be around with their peers and get motivated. But we as parents should also be aware of the fact that it's important for them to do something what they like. And last thing to say, of course, as a jog ambassador, I mean, our ambition in jog is that we actively help municipalities and therefore also schools to promote and to help and to create these environments for kids. So that, you know, that we look at not just the sports but nutrition and everything that supports this healthy lifestyle.
I think you're going to be enjoying today's session, taking lots of notes. I know from last November that, you know, you learn from the kids. It's a two-way thing. So I'm going to let you get back to your virtual seat. You can turn your camera on and enjoy the session. Thank you so much for opening today's
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it.
Now, to continue, we'd like to share 3 incredible videos from young people around the world that really sets the scene for our discussions today.
Pentru a avea energie și chef de joacă, trebuie să mâncăm sănătos și să facem mișcare. Să fac mișcare în fiecare zi, să mănânc sănătos și să am grijă de corpul meu. O masă echilibrată și să nu mâncăm prea mult. Și să facem și mișcare în fiecare zi.
Ar trebui să fac sport, să mănânc cât mai multe legume și fructe, să dorm bine și atât.
Vină cu mine în mișcarea SET, să învățăm cum să fim sănătoși și ce să mâncăm ca să fim sănătoși.
Vă invit să veniți cu mine în mișcarea SET pentru că o să fiți mai sănătoși, plini de energie și vă face bine.
Eu invit pe colegii mei să facă sport în fiecare zi, să mănânce sănătos și aibă grijă de ei. Vă invit alături de mine să veniți în mișcarea SET. Veniți și voi în mișcarea SET!
Hi, my name is Panagiotis, I'm 15 years old, I live in Nicosia, Cyprus, and I'm a competitive swimmer. A healthy lifestyle for me is providing my body with the right amount of nutrients and staying in the best shape possible. Another factor for a healthy lifestyle is the training on a daily basis and the right amount of sleep for recovering properly. A healthy lifestyle is very important for everyone, not only for now, but also for the rest of their life.
Hello, my name is Billie Jean Rodriguez and I am 17 years of age and I live on Sable. One thing which I would like for my community to implement for the youth would be a track course for bike riding, which would help all the youth which like riding bikes to get off of the roads and do it on a more private space.
Hello, my name is Jade Every. I am 15 years old and I live on Sable. The activity that I would like to see is more active activities for elderly on Sable. Why? Because I find that it is very important to have exercise in order to have a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely incredible, all true professionals there, and it's great to have some of our representatives who have been behind those scenes. I've noticed that we've got Adrian in Romania. Great to have you with us. If I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize. Jenica over in Soba, And we are truly a global audience today. Hi, Jill, welcome from the US. It's quite early for you, so we're grateful to have you all with us. Do keep those questions, those comments and the observations, but I'd like to welcome our first speaker onto the screens. Please, can you give a great big welcome? You have to have a virtual one, which is like this, Sarah. Programme Director, Impact on Urban Health in the UK, Sarah Hickey. Thank you for joining us today, Sarah.
Thanks, Sam. Happy to be here.
It's wonderful that you are going to kickstart what I think is going to be a really interactive discussion. To scene set and tell a little bit about your story, Sarah, one of your programs aims to improve children's health in urban areas by tackling childhood obesity. Can you share a little bit about the story?
Yeah, so as you said, I work for an organisation called Impact on Urban Health, and we're part of a charitable foundation in South London, UK. And I guess what we believe as an organisation is that the places where we live, go to school, work, spend our time really shape our health, and also that these places they're designed and can be redesigned for all sorts of purposes, including good, including bad. And I run a program within that, which, as you say, is focused on tackling childhood obesity. It's a 10-year program, and it really focuses on the food aspect and focuses on making eating well the easiest thing to do rather than the hard thing to do, especially if you live in urban areas. And broadly, how we try and run our programs is to learn from across the world on what other people are doing, bring it to our area in South London, and then share back out what we've learned from our work to influence both wider policy and industry practice, but also other programs on childhood obesity. So the program's mission, it's to tackle something that we call the child obesity inequality gap. So if you're growing up in a neighbourhood which is on average lower income, you're more than twice as likely to grow up overweight or obese than someone growing up in a healthier one. And when we looked at that, we realised that's driven a lot by the food around us, the food options around us, especially how affordable and accessible the healthy stuff is, as opposed to the unhealthy. And when families step out on their doorstep in the high streets in our area, they're often flooded by food options that are really unhealthy, and it's much harder to find the healthy stuff. So everything we do is about changing that, so changing what we call food environments. So how do we change the food and food messaging in places where children, young people and families spend their time? And how we practically do that is we try and bring together those organizations and people that really decide what food is available in schools, in shops, online. Bring them together with those that influence what they do, including citizens, including young people as consumers, and bring them together and try and redesign these spaces. So as I said, the healthy eating well is the easiest thing to do.
That is the biggest challenge in quite, as you said, in urban areas, of which, you know, the whole globe is populated with us. For those just joining us, we are talking to Programme Director at Impact on Urban Health, based in the UK, Sarah Hickey. Now, Sarah, you know, setting the scene really nicely, we had a seminar in November talking about, you know, the changes that have happened because of the pandemic. It would be remiss to, you know, we are coming out, thank goodness, you know, we're all very hopeful, but that must have also had an impact on what's happening in the high street, and a greater impact on food choices as well. What's the organisation's sort of role now, and has it changed somewhat over the past year or so?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think our mission's changed, actually, because I think what the pandemic did was worsen something that was already there and has been there for a long time, which was this deep inequality around access to the things that we need to be healthy, including food. So what we saw with the pandemic was those who were already at risk of a poor diet, including those who were on a low income, were then facing further barriers to access good food, as well as, you know, lots more people suddenly finding themselves struggling to do that. So in terms of actually what we see the problem, it's something that goes beyond COVID. COVID has, I think, highlighted it, worsened it, but actually what it's all about is more long-term, changing the food options around us. And I think young people and youth voice are a really critical factor in doing that.
You mentioned that the program is 10 years. When did you start? Where are you in the journey? Sorry, there's probably about 14 questions in one here. When did it start? Where are you in the journey? Are you satisfied? And what input are the young people in those communities in Southwark and Lambeth having in this program? Yeah. Sorry, 45 questions.
No, that's all good questions. So we're about 4 and a bit years in. So actually we're almost halfway through. And what we've got is a collection of projects which I think are all really interesting. So they really range from projects, for example, with a bunch of major supermarkets that are trying to redesign all the stores in our area, to projects with all our schools, both where schools are trying to reshape the school they're providing in their canteens, but also the local governments trying to think about how do we affect school food supply, as well as projects with more local charities and community organisations, a lot of which are about how do we give people who are affected by this issue, who are, you know, trying to get good food for themselves and their families, how do we raise their voice in demanding better food. And really practically, I guess what we think is important is a youth voice in understanding the issue. So when we started the program, I think one thing that was very interesting to me was we've been talking about childhood obesity as an issue, as a health issue in the UK for 10 years. But actually young people, that is about children and young people, but young people and children haven't actually been part of that debate about what the solution is. Also, we looked at sort of general public understanding about what's the problem. And public understanding was, it's sort of about what people know to do right and whether they care. So let's try and convince more people that this is important and give them, you know, healthy eating tips. But actually, when you spoke to both parents, young people and children, what you just realize immediately is that most people have actually got a sense of what the problem is, have got a sense of what healthy eating is. But when you step outside again into these food environments, everything is acting against that knowledge. So it's kind of, we thought actually it's really important to get youth voice to just say this is the issue. It's an issue of the food around us, less so than willpower really about whether we care. We do care. The second was kind of getting young people involved in research, again trying to understand what the issue is. So we work with an organisation called the Social Innovation Partnership to train a load of community researchers, because we realised actually who asks the question matters too. So they support a lot of our research. And then the third bit is creating platforms for social action projects. So what helps young people who care about the food around them, what gives them the resources they need to, you know, design solutions for change. And then finally, what we think is really critical to think about is how you connect those young people into these bigger decision makers. So, you know, supermarkets, for example, drive so much of what we eat. How do we connect them in a better way to these consumer groups, including young people, so that we really kind of, the great stuff that's developed really informs these big sort of structural decision-making forums. So yeah, that's sort of
we constantly in the world of commerce, we talk about, you know, we've got to ask the why of the stakeholder, but I think the why of this particular stakeholder, the young people who eventually are our voters, our influencers, our taxpayers, has been forgotten, and it's great to see this. I'm conscious of time, but sort of it would be great to know, so you're almost halfway through, what are sort of the goals for the next, you know, I won't say to the end of the program because the world has significantly changed in the last 12 months, as we know, but, you know, what are your sort of key priorities now for the upcoming future?
Firstly, to help our projects just get bigger locally so that they have an impact on food environments for this area in inner city London. I guess more broadly is to make sure that everything we learn locally we can share that for influence elsewhere. So both use it to speak kind of effectively to policy makers in the UK and I guess beyond, who we think need to make changes to affect food environments, and also industry, commercial forces. So really making sure that all the good stuff that's happening for us locally, we're kind of sharing it back out, partly to sort of say, this is what we think others could do, but also to learn, keep learning ourselves what good looks like and the best ways to work with all these different partners that ultimately need to work together for change.
So this is a great platform. You who are enjoying sitting back and listening to our speakers, this is the great platform to connect, because as you said, reinventing the wheel doesn't need to be done. There are some fabulous initiatives, as we're going to hear about from our panel today, and actually a joint up collaborative approach, which is, the ethos of Youth Health Community, is what we need moving forward.
Absolutely.
Sarah, it's been an absolute joy. I'd like to be talking to you and interviewing for another 2 hours, but sadly we can't. Please stay online with us. Enjoy the conversations. Do get involved with any questions. But thank you so much for being part of today.
Thank you.
Amazing. Before we meet our 4, and I'm calling them, so no pressure, get ready guys, inspirational speakers, I would like to open up a quick poll to find out a little bit about your organisation. So it's your time to do some work. So within your organisation, I'd like to know, is there a formal or a strategic inclusion of young people's opinions and views on healthy communities? So if it's a very simple question, yes, no, we haven't got any maybes in this. If you can answer that poll for me whilst you're doing that, that will give us as a panel the chance to understand, and so we can see who we need to influence and who we can support and who we can learn from. This is going to be very interesting for our discussions later. I think we might be able to get the poll coming up, so if we can, that would be great. I want to set the scene and intro the speakers shortly, but we have got 61% of you who have said yes. Panel, this is great news. We've got 39% of our audience who we want to shift and support influencing strategies and including young people's opinions and views. So thank you all for that vote. Panel, remember that. Rather than a formal introduction by me, we've asked our panelists to pitch their intro to you. You're going to meet each speaker individually and they're going to share their story just for a couple of minutes and then hand the baton through the 4 panelists. We are going to hear, and then we are going to be talking to Yasmina Sina. She's from Favela Street Foundation, a young ambassador. We're going to have Claudia Batts, who's a team member at Young Leaders for Health and Policy and Projects Coordinator at the World Obesity Federation. We've got Pedro Concalves, who's a member of the Co-Create Youth Declaration Task Force, Co-Create and Youth Alliance member. And our last intro will be Dev Sharma of Bite Back 2030. He's a youth board member. But we are going to kick things off. I am going to sit back and have a glass of water whilst Yasmina welcomes her and tells us your story. Yasmina, it's over to you.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Yasmina Sina. Thanks for having me. I am 70 years old. I'm from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and I participate in the Favela Street program. The program started in the middle of the second lockdown in Amsterdam. Every Monday evening, 29 girls who have joined the program and who have been selected come together. We have 2 parts in this program. We first start with a healthy meal that we eat together. After that, in the first hour, the theory part where we share our goals and dreams and inspire each other. We talk about how we can achieve those goals and also talk about things like how important a positive mindset is and how we can achieve those goals. Furthermore, we also learn that we are a role model just by being yourself and being confident, which isn't easy. But with the right mindset, we can bring a positive impact in our community. Then comes the second part. That's the part where we work out with all the girls. That's also the best part for most of the girls. When we work out, we are super motivated because we all enjoy it. When we play football or kickbox, we feel connected with each other. And I think that's the case with many more young people. If we can create a positive sporting environment like Favela Street or at my gym, you can bring young people together. The team of trainers that create the program looks like us. They are all women with a non-Western migration background and with a background in professional sports. They are role models for us and we recognize ourselves in them. That makes us trusting them easier. I also think that eating healthy remains the most difficult because we are outside, we're tempted to eat unhealthy. In addition, unhealthy meals are often cheaper than healthy meals, which makes the choice easier for young people. Finally, I have learned from this program that being yourself is good enough and you have to believe in yourself because you have always do more than you think than you can imagine. I would like to pass the mic to Claudia.
Thank you, Yasmina, and really inspiring story. Hi, everyone. My name is Claudia, and I am 24 years old, based in London. I am half Turkish, half German, but grew up in Hong Kong. And I've had a desire to improve the health of individuals in society by promoting healthy lifestyles from a very young age, particularly by elevating the voices of groups that are often excluded from conversations due to their gender, race, age, or appearance. And after pursuing a degree in public health, I started working at the World Obesity Federation, where I now oversee our childhood obesity initiatives, including the Co-Create project that Pedro will speak to. I've become more and more confident, if anything, that the most passionate and empowered individuals are those themselves who have lived experience of disease or are affected by disease, be it obesity or anything else. And this is true both at the community level or when it comes to policy making and decision making. I've had the opportunity to work with youth through organizations, mentoring programs, and the National Citizen Service here in the UK. But I would like to share a few insights on how we can really support processes when working with young people. And this comes from both the youth perspective myself, but also being someone who works with stakeholders across age groups. So firstly, I think we really need to, in order to reach full meaningful engagement, we need to make sure that youth are involved in projects from its inception to implementation and evaluation. There is no point having youth involved merely in one aspect of a project. We need to really talk to youth and discuss with them what are the challenges, what are the opportunities and solutions that are available to us. And moreover, instead of talking about youth, why don't we talk to youth and ask them, what it's like being young today and bringing their perspectives into our projects. Beyond this, we need to really actually invest in supporting youth with their own projects and actually involving them in training around advocacy and communications. But let's just for a second move beyond the health narrative. Essentially, it's about creating young people who are empowered, confident, who are not afraid to voice their opinions and concerns beyond the topic that they are advocating for. I'd like to end by just briefly alluding to the Child's Right Convention that states that all children have a right to state their opinion, and that's pertaining to both personal as well as structural questions affecting them. I'll now hand it over to Pedro, who I've been very fortunate to work with over the past year.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you for your work, for your amazing work with Co-Create. My name is Pedro. I'm 19 years old and I live in Portugal. And I've been working with Co-Create for the past year. And I'll share a little bit of my story and the work we've been doing. It all started in Portugal, where I joined one of the Portuguese Co-Create Youth Alliances. And we picked up work that has been already, that youth already did, other youth, and we picked on that, and our goal was to come up with solutions to the problems that they brought up. And this work was made in several different countries, such as Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, the UK, and Norway. And after that, after every country did their work, the Youth Task Force, the Co-Create Youth Declaration Task Force, was created, and we established 4 demands that we wrote in a declaration that we truly find fundamental to change the course of this epidemic. Those are 4 demands that say stop marketing of unhealthy food to children under the age of 18 years, secure children high quality food at schools and nutritional education, implement a sugar sweetened beverage tax to unhealthy foods so they are more expensive, and offer all children and adolescents free organized physical activity at least once every week. I'm very proud of this declaration and the work the task force has been doing. And I believe it's fruit of the Co-Create youth labor and excitement and ability to share their opinions. If you want, I can share the link to the declaration so you can see a little bit more. I see Sammy. Now we are in a stage of adopting these demands, and it's quite difficult because of the systems Sarah talked about. So we really needed to fight and share and raise awareness to the public eye, so everyone along youth can build a healthier society. And now I'll give the floor to Dev Sharma from Bite Back 2030 in the UK.
Thank you so much, Pedro. Wow, how do I compete? Everyone's so inspiring. I'm so honored to be here amongst so many inspiring young people. My name is Dev Sharma. I'm 16 years old from the UK and the chair of the Bite Back 2030 Youth Board. So Bite Back is a Jamie Oliver founded youth campaign which aims to revolutionize the food industry. What we want to do is finally put youth voices back in the space regarding children's health. We've realized that over the last 30 years, there's been a global epidemic about childhood obesity. It's skyrocketed. And something similar, something that's been key about the last 30 years has been that young people's voices haven't really been valued up till now. We want to change that. We want to add to the conversation. We want to ensure that young people are actively taking part in policy, influencing decisions made about them, nothing about us without us. That's our motto. So Bite Back 2030, we aim to, the way that we work is we aim to do a top-bottom approach. We believe that the environment young people are growing up in at the moment is incredibly skewed. It's bombarding you with junk food. It's not leaving you any option. I'll set the scene a bit. I leave school and I am bombarded with junk food ads. So I go to a school which is on a mile. It's a long road and it's called the Golden Mile. Sounds amazing, right? Golden Mile of junk food ads. It's you walking down, you're trying to go home, and you are bombarded with junk food ads on the back of your bus ticket, on the bus stand, on a billboard, on your phone. And it's incredible because a young person whose brain is so malleable, who's so shaped by the environment around them, young people like us in the 21st century are growing up around junk food by these massive multi-billion dollar corporations that are pushing this narrative saying junk food is okay all day, every day. And that's the type of young people that are growing up now in this incredibly skewed environment. And we want to change that. So I'm so proud to be here. I'm so proud to be amongst so many other young people to discuss ways that we can change this, how young people can come together and really make a change. I just talked about recently, I wrote an open letter to our previous health secretary, Matt Hancock, and that was regarding banning junk food ads, restricting junk food ads to young people. Bite Back led the campaign, and to our surprise, amazingly, the government listened and actually restricted junk food ads online to young people. And that's crazy. That's the type of things we need. We need to make sure young people are growing up in a healthy environment, and the starring role is healthy food. I'll pass back to the incredible Sam, who is our amazing host. Thank you so much for letting me introduce myself.
Wow. I'm so glad that they all are very passionate about this, because they would just take over my job. I'm very worried now. This is the most worried I've been in terms of my job, because that was incredible, guys. You did the handoff. In all these years of doing that, that's the most professional handoff to each other that I've heard, and really, truly great introductions. We have got a short amount of time to have this discussion. I'm going to see questions coming through from the audience, so don't you worry about those. I'll keep an eye on those. If you've got a question, please say who your question's for. If it's for everybody, that's fine, put all. If it's for Dev, then put Dev, etc., etc., etc. Now, I just want to ask a couple of questions briefly to you all individually, and then I want to sort of ask some bigger questions that I've pulled out myself whilst we get the questions in from the audience. Yasmina, you know, truly inspirational story. You start talking and you make me feel positive. What was your trigger? And I think this is something for you all I'd like to know. What was your trigger to become involved in this project and become this role model that you are within the community?
Yes, I saw this program come along on social media, and I saw that the program was about playing sport with girls, and it seems like a lot of fun. To be honest, I didn't know that the program was about becoming a role model. We also worked on our mindset and goal setting. But when I discovered that it was as much about personal growth as it was about playing sports, I became even more into it. Yeah, that is what I think.
And it's do you get, so you've got 29 young people in the community at the moment. When someone joins the community, how do you make them, because it's hard, we all know that socializing is difficult. I also find it still difficult, but as a teenager, you know, it can be quite hard. How do you welcome sort of new people into your community and make people feel comfortable?
Yes, you already said it. You have to make them feel comfortable so they can talk about themselves, and we ask questions like, what do you like to do? What are your goals? How do you think about life? So you feel comfortable to talk and to sport together.
Well, you're very comfortable on this platform, so butt in anytime you like.
Thank you.
Claudia, thank you for your absolutely great introduction. You and Dev sort of alluded to, and I'm sure that Yasmina and Pedro concur, this whole conversation about being involved from sort of concept of policy and discussions through to completion, having that voice. You said talk to the young people, not about. And Dev, you used a different phrase, but sort of along the same lines. How do policymakers, you know, the people in government, in organizations that we've got today, how do we change that? You know, how do we change that conversation and bring young people into that? Hope that's not a tough one for you, Claudia.
Thanks, Sammy. I can maybe give an example of how the Co-Create project specifically is working with young people and involving them in the project, so building on Pedro's presentation. So I think one thing that we didn't allude to in the panel was actually how Co-Create has actually been working with youth across Europe to actually bring them into the conversation and actually to conceptualize obesity, and we really tried to conceptualize obesity as the outcome of numerous interacting factors, and we've started to ask young people, what do they perceive to be the drivers of this? So our colleagues at LSHTM have been doing, in the UK, have been doing a lot of systems mapping work. And this has really just come to show that youth don't actually, they see the bigger picture. They don't just see physical activity and diet as the main drivers of obesity. And, you know, from their perspective, other factors are actually getting in the way of them making the choices that they want to make. And I think we've seen this from both Yasmina's introduction as well. So lack of free time, pressures that are affecting their mental health. And I see this as a cycle of really interactive factors here that we can't really, can't dismiss. And I think it's bringing youth and policymakers into one room, which we do through a series of dialogue forums, has been really influential because it shows policymakers that youth see these wider systemic issues. And then now what we're trying to do is to make these sort of these tools available in open access so that everyone can engage in such dialogues in the future.
Thank you, Claudia. Dev, I have to say, I do love your picture when you turned off your camera there. I did panic, but then I'm like, he's already outside Number 10, already advocating for the next project. We've got some questions coming through from the audience, which I'd like to just raise one. Thank you all for coming through. I'll try and get through as many as I can. We've also got, thank you, Sarah, adding some content. So use the chat, everybody, to share best practice, as Sarah said. If you're working on initiatives, it would be great to see. So guys, and I'll start, I think, with you, Dev. I'm going to ask this, but I'll ask you all individually. We've got a question here. What would be your suggestions? As we're talking about engaging with the government, and we'll talk about, decision makers, but also how do you engage with youth to talk about a subject that is as sensitive as obesity? Hugh Duplessis says, as we will want to reverse the trend, we also do not want to stigmatize any individuals nor behaviors while doing so, to avoid increasing an already existing stigmatization. So if I can ask you all, to have a wee think about that. Dev, starting with you just briefly, how do we tackle that? Because it is a very sensitive topic.
Firstly, I want to get started. I want to say I despise the word obesity. I think it has so much trauma, so much stigma behind it, and that's not the way we should handle this problem. It's children's health. Children's health is the term that I always go with. How this is such a massive issue. How do we get young people to care? How do we really act upon this? And the way that I like to go about it, and what Bite Back does, is we look at climate change. Look at climate change 5-10 years ago. Were young people really engaged? Were they really actively out there wanting to make a difference? No. But what's happened over the last 5-10 years is young people have been educated. They've been informed about the climate around them. They've been educated about big businesses taking advantage of the climate, how they themselves play an impact. And we like to replicate that and put it into children's health. So what we do is we educate young people and inform them and empower them. We tell them about how big businesses are manipulating them. They're manipulating their health. They're taking advantage. Big corporations with billions of pounds are using that to their advantage to manipulate young people. They are shaping a landscape, and that's the only type of landscape that you visibly see. You make them angry. You get young people and you show them the actual problem, and then you tell them how to act, and you give them a platform, and then they speak out, and then we come together in mass, and that's when politicians listen. And once you can actually educate and you inspire a young person, there's nothing stopping a policymaker on the other side not agreeing with that young person, because an informed and inspired and an educated young person can obliterate a politician sitting on the other side, because they know the facts, they're empowered, they know exactly what they're saying.
So we need to change some of the communication and how we talk to young people. Pedro, Dev's very passionate, saying obesity isn't the right word to be talking to young people about. It is about their overall health. From your perspective, you're based out in Portugal, you're building this declaration and the policy. Would you agree that we have to change language a bit to talk about this sensitive topic with young people?
Yes, because the problem is the way obesity word is seen. We associate obesity with certain amount of people. This person is obese. And I participated in a podcast organized by the World Obesity Federation, which I had the pleasure to talk with Claudia. And the one thing they said in every single episode was that in there they use the people's first language, which means you would have to say the one with obesity, with the disease, not the obese people. This way you wouldn't be associating it with a person in question. So you would be talking about the problem itself. So the problem with the stigmatization is that people associate it with bad habits from one individual and not with this whole system that we're trying to change.
Thank you. It seems a concurrent theme here. Claudia, you are nodding. Is this what's happening in terms of, you know, the language that, you know, you're representing the World Obesity Federation? How do we change this to engage more young people into this, you know, healthier lifestyle and long-term legacy of health?
I think we really need to shift the narrative from individual level interventions to sort of beyond that, and actually just increase awareness in both at the educational level at schools, which is really not the case at the moment, but increase awareness of both how to you know, training around actually how to use imagery and language appropriately, but also the narrative, you know, weight does not equal health, and body size does not equal health. And often, no matter, you know, how I've been in rooms with patients living with obesity, and we never, you know, Pedro alluded to very well about the use of language and never referring to an obese person. But I think we need to recognize that despite multiple, you know, continued efforts to manage weight, often some people cannot really do so easily, and the roots of obesity are a lot deeper. There's access to care, mental health, even when you think about sleep and other comorbidities, you can't really, there's so many underlying structural drivers, and those are not the ones that receive the attention at the moment. And so I think we need to really focus on doing that. And for instance, mental health, I think, is a really good place to start working from my perspective on some of these issues, and raised by youth themselves that I've worked with.
We've gone through just Jill, thank you so much for your question. I will get to that. Keep those questions coming in. Let's talk about food. You all alluded to it in different ways, starting with Yasmina saying, you know, the community is there. That's a lot of positivity there. You know, you're being yourselves as that role model, but the moment you step out, the moment you step online, you're influenced by fast food, or maybe let's not call it fast food, but food choices that are not healthy. As you, I think Yasmina said, maybe Dev said, or maybe you all did, that, you know, it's quite often the cheaper option. Now, I'm going to sort of play a little bit of devil's advocate. You know, these organizations have been around for years, and as this problem has as well. These organizations have to also make money. They employ, you know, thousands, if not, you know, tens of thousands of people around the world. It's a big paradigm shift. What, you know, what things can, you know, I know, Dev, you're being the activist, talking about these big bad corporates, but they are big organizations that are bringing, you know, the GDP of our countries, that help support our infrastructure. How do we sort of support changing this big influence on the streets, online, to a more positive conversation without putting a ton of people out of work? I know that the declaration is there. I'm going to start, first of all, with you, Dev, as you have been having these conversations.
Apologies, hard 2020. Forgot to turn off my mute. I think no one's talking about, I think no one wants big companies not to make a profit. We're not saying Nestle, Unilever, you can't go out and make a profit. You can't go out and sell products. That's not the thing. I think the argument, the conversation is around big companies have a massive responsibility. They are responsible for massive amounts of global consumption. And therefore, and they also have a massive role in young people's lives. Therefore, they are also responsible for children's health. Big companies now have a bigger responsibility, and they should be more aware, and therefore they should advertise and target healthier choices and healthier products to young people. They should reformulate their products and make them more healthier. They should make healthier products more cheaper and more at the forefront, and shine a light on healthier products, which we aren't really seeing happening. If industry, like we've seen with climate change, we can come together and make drastic shifts without losing money and remaining profitable. We don't want to take people out of jobs. We want to make young people healthy. We want the next generation of young people to grow up healthy, strong, and big companies are heavily irresponsible. They need to understand the responsibility, and that can only happen when we come together and really look at positive ways of creating that change. So yeah, it's not about sacking people or getting people out of jobs, not making a profit. Shareholders are a massive thing, but I think it's about greater responsibility.
Yasmina, you were saying, you said, you know, the difficulty, one of the biggest challenges in the community, in the favela community, is eating healthily. How do you as a group sort of have a conversation as the favela community about, you know, not looking, not thinking, you know, not responding to these adverts or these unhealthy options? What tips do you give people in your community to turn and look at healthier food options?
Of course, it is difficult to not get tempted by all these fast food caters, but you have to find that balance. Like today I'm gonna eat healthy and tomorrow is my cheat day, for example, and just talk with our people like how do you, and always not every healthy meal is not as good as fast food meals, so you have to talk about each other, maybe say for what do you like to eat and how can you how do you say that? Like, hoe doe je dat zeggen? Zo van dat beide gewoon lekker zijn. Dat is ook niet hoe je het zeggen.
It could both be.
It could both be delicious by just help each other to make it tempted for each other to just eat healthy food.
So it's actually sort of creating that social change as you as influencers. That's a really good way of doing that, and that's a really great learning for everybody else in our community. We've had a comment from Prince Pieter Christian. Thank you so much. Politicians cannot just be the solution, he says. Define strategies built on programs that are already successful. Politics can promote that or translate success into policies. He also says, you know, also recognize that schools, when kids prone to obesity, try to help in the early stages. He agrees that supermarkets play a big role in supporting healthy food and want to recognize that fast food is quite expensive. It's a big barrier for kids. That's in the Netherlands. That's an interesting point. Pedro, in terms of, you know, you're working on policy, and you say that young people look differently at creating policy than those who are the policymakers in government. Can you tell us what influence and why it is different?
So the school system and the entire systems that we live in today have changed a lot since today's politicians were our age. So in every single system, education, marketing, every system I talked about and the declaration talks about has changed a lot. So if we want to change today's problems, of course, we need to look at the people that are living in that situation, and the politics that are now in the government. They don't have the youth perspective. They don't eat at canteens. They are not. They don't see the targeted social media influencers and advertisement about unhealthy food. They are not in our places. So that's why I say if we wanted to create a policy and policies that affect youth, we should involve youth so we can create an accurate solution.
I'm going to ask you, it could be that one of you can please put your hand up if you know. Jill has, and Lydica, thank you for saying that. Do you know if there is, just give me a yes, no, and then we can connect you with Jill, a youth group that you work with in the United States, like Co-Create? Is there a similar organization over there? Do we know or not know? Claudia.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I don't know if there's a youth group per se that we don't work with any actively, but Faith Newsom, who I worked with on the World Obesity's podcast and who is my co-host, actually founded her own organization called Oceans Lifestyles, and she has had a very empowering personal journey living with obesity that and she's truly inspirational. So I do encourage you to go and check out her work as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Sarah's made a great comment, which I'd like to share with our audience. Sarah Hickey, who joined us at the beginning from Urban Health. Broadly, the question corporates should be asking themselves, Sarah says, and be held accountable for, is how to ensure their sales and profits come from nutritious foods rather than ones high in salt, fat, sugar, like Dev says. Lots of room for corporate innovation in this area. I think one role for politicians, Sarah says, is to make sure that laws and regulations support this effort, like Co-Create's call for taxes on high sugar products. I think you'd all give that a firm thumbs up in terms of initiatives that are going on. I know that we are ridiculously short of time, and we are going to continue this conversation after the webinar closes at past. So please do join us in Zoom. We're going to pop a link into the chat for after this session, where we can delve into some of these topics in a little bit more detail, face to face with our panelists. But I want to be able to give you all the floor. We have 100 people from a variety of different organizations. We know we've got 39% of our audience who haven't included, for one reason or another, we'll not judge them. They haven't had, and they haven't included young people's views and opinions in their strategies. I'd like to give you all the floor, and I'll do it in the same order as we started. So Yasmina, Claudia, Pedro and Dev, be conscious of time. Yasmina, if you had one thing that you'd like to say from your perspective, because this is what this is about, youth perspective, what should we as the people who are currently making the decisions, making the laws and the policies, what would you like to say to our audience in terms of changing and creating a better, healthier lifestyle for young people? Big question.
I think that the most important is that you have to ask the young people what they think about some subjects, and just to take them serious. If they talk about that, just listen, and then after that, that's it. You have to take it and listen to them. That's the most important thing I have to say.
Should I go next?
Yeah, go for it. I'm just giving you the nod, thinking you passed the baton so well last time. Just go for it, Claudia.
Perfect. I would just say that to make young people feel welcomed and make them feel like that what they're saying matters, and when they're talking about a specific problem, and that their opinions are worth the same as adults. So also making sure that we really, not just involve them for a one-time event, but do it meaningfully and recurrently, so that they follow the entire policy-making process and don't just sort of receive information on what they should be doing or the need to participate.
Pedro.
Yes. The thing I would like to highlight is that is to not be afraid of not knowing enough. When I joined the Co-Create and when I started working more and more about this issue, I always thought to myself, what am I doing here? Like, I've never studied this problem. My area of study has nothing to do with it. I study design, but after that, and after being encouraged and talking with other people, I understood that that's exactly what's necessary. People who are from completely different areas and completely different places to give their opinions and to give their insights and especially their experiences. So what I'd like to say is not to be afraid of not being enough, because if one policy could affect everybody should give their opinion.
Thank you, Pedro. And Dev, your final words.
I'm going to repeat again what I said at the start, and I said, nothing about us without us. Young people have lived experiences. Ask young people, they've been there, they're in a skewed food environment, they have lived experiences. I'll quickly give an example because I know we're short on time, and we'll go back to the consultation that the government announced when they were going, they wanted to learn more about how restrictions on junk food advertising would affect. So they did a consultation. The consultation, the questions around it were designed for academics. They were designed for industry experts. If you're in a junk food advertising ban aimed at young people, why not open the consultation to young people and design the questions around it? That's why organizations like Bite Back stepped up, and we wanted to make young people's voices heard. Let's have a shift. We need to, businesses need to shift, politicians need to shift. Let's hear young people's voices a lot more. I think Claudia's got her hand up.
I can see that. I'll thank you, Dev, so much for that. Claudia, just before we close.
Yeah, just one last comment from me. I think I would just urge policymakers and decision makers to actually look what young people have actually done to date. So now with the UN Food Systems Summit, for instance, which is coming upon us, there's the Act for Food, Act for Change campaign that was recently launched. I don't know if everyone has seen it, but essentially youth around the world and young leaders have come to advocate and to steer positive change for our world systems, and they're incredibly inspirational people. And I think they just need to see what we're doing already, because often, yeah, that will act as motivation to continue talking to us and to involve us in their programs and etc.
100%, an absolutely great way to close out this session. Thank you to our audience. I know you've got some questions that we haven't managed to get through to. Please do jump into the Zoom room. I'd like to extend a massive, massive virtual round of applause, and if I could put some sound on, to say thank you to all our speakers, Sarah, Pedro, Claudia, Dev and Yasmina, and of course opening, and big thank you for your questions as well, Sir Prince Pieter Christian. Keep this conversation, please. When you close out of this session, copy that link and go and meet our incredible panelists. You heard them. I don't need to wrap up. They wrapped up so succinctly. Listen to these people, hear their achievements. They are the future. And I hope, like me, you're very excited about that future. That's it for this session. We'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of minutes over in the Zoom, link in the chat. Thank you for joining us. See you again soon.